Hi guys, welcome to the video on how to prepare a wet mount microscope slide and also how to focus a microscope. So there's just a couple simple rules to both of these, but the first part is going to really help you get some really good slides to view some really neat specimens this year. And focusing a microscope is actually really important. It's amazing how many students have a little trouble with that, so there's just a few simple rules to help you guys get started. So first we'll talk about rules when really working with microscope slides and preparing a wet mount. First of all, a lot of students have a lot of trouble getting a really good view on glass slides, and I think most of the time it's because they don't clean the slides first before they use them. And a lot of students handle these slides, so they get the slides dirty and there's a lot of residue. But if you can just simply clean the glass slide with using soapy water or ethyl alcohol, it cleans it really well. And then make sure you rinse that slide well as the cover slip. And you want to get all the lint and particles off. And a lot of students, what they do is they kind of clean it with that brown paper towel that's in the classroom. But I kind of teach the swipe method where you really swipe the whole slide instead of stopping in the middle. And that way you don't have a lot of little particles on the middle of the glass. So I'll show you that in the classroom when we start working with microscopes. And the other thing is you want to handle glass slides and cover slips just touching the edges. Otherwise you'll get fingerprints all over them, and instead of looking at really neat specimens, you're looking at your fingerprints. So when making a wet mount, we are usually looking at organisms or objects that are actually suspended in a solution. And the first thing you want to do is clean the slide, and then the next thing you want to do is just take one drop of the solution and put it in the middle of the slide. And most importantly, you don't want to put too much, because if you put too much, what happens is that cover slip floats on top of that solution and there's too much water or too much liquid. So you just really want to have one simple drop in the middle. And then you want to place that cover slip down using what we call the hinge method. And what that really means is just simply putting it on its side, just like this, and then dropping it straight down. And what that actually does is it removes all the air bubbles. It pushes the liquid a little bit to the right, but it removes all the air bubbles that might get trapped. And that's so you're not looking at air bubbles, you're actually looking at the specimen. Now we want to talk about how to focus using a microscope. And before we get started, I just want to go over a couple of pieces of the microscope. And you're familiar with the ocular lens, and this is actually called the body tube. But we're going to focus on this middle area right here. And so these are the objectives. Most of the microscopes you're going to be using are going to have 3 objectives. And I want you to notice that there is a high-powered objective as well as a low-powered objective. And so just make sure you're aware when you start working with the microscope, you always want to start out with a low-power objective. And connecting to the arm is the body of the microscope. This here is called the stage. These are actually called the stage clips, and these are used to clip in your slide and to secure it to the stage. And finally, there's 2 focus knobs. There's the coarse adjustment knob and there's the fine adjustment knob. And sometimes the fine adjustment knob is actually on the outside of the coarse adjustment knob, and then at times they are different in 2 different locations on the microscope. And finally, there's the light source down here at the bottom, and sometimes you can control the light source up here in the diaphragm, and at other times you control the light source down at the base of the microscope. Okay, so to focus the microscope, the first thing you want to do is you want to set the lowest powered lens or the lowest power objective in place. And so that's usually at 4x, and you want to make sure that that is the objective that you're using to start with. Then you want to make sure you go ahead and move the stage away from the lens or away from the objective and go ahead and place the slide onto the microscope stage. If there are actually any clips in place, you want to clip in the glass slide onto that stage. And there are 2 dials that you can turn to control which way you're moving the stage. And so rather than moving the microscope slide itself, you're moving the microscope stage. So go ahead and focus using the coarse knob while using the lower objective lens. And once you have your organism or your specimen in focus, you can increase magnification by changing to a higher powered objective. And make sure the big rule is never change the coarse focus when using a higher power objective. Anything above the 4x, you only want to use fine focus. And your fine focus is going to be the smaller knob. And on some microscopes, that smaller knob isn't on the same handle as the coarse knob, but on other microscopes, you'll actually see it's on the same handle. But for most of y'all's microscopes, it's actually a separate smaller knob. So you always want to use the fine focus when using a higher power objective.